The Gulf states wanted to stay out of it, as Brett said. So they did not even allow us to use their bases in a number of cases. Now they're into it. They've been attacked, and not just our bases, but civilian areas as well.
Now that Iran's supreme leader is gone, the question on everyone's mind, both in the Middle East and here in the U.S., is what comes next. Here with me now is retired U.S. Army General David Petraeus and former presidential special envoy Brett McGurk. It's an honor to have you both here. We are at the wall because I think it will really help people understand what we have seen and what we're going to see next. And I'll start with you, General Petraeus, in terms of the strike targets inside Iran. What were U.S. forces able and Israeli forces able to get, and what do you think they're going for next?
Well, of course, this is a massive operation. There were hundreds of Israeli aircraft, hundreds of American aircraft, hundreds of cruise missiles coming out of ships, submarines, and so forth. And the focus, the Israelis, it appears, was largely on the regime leaders. And of course, they had extraordinary success in taking out the supreme leader and a number of the other most important figures in the regime. Really quite stunning. In fact, it's particularly stunning that the arrogance of the Iranians, that they all gathered together for meetings, presuming that we didn't attack in the early morning hours like we normally do, and therefore they had a period of daylight during which they could come together and talk. The U.S., meanwhile, was going largely after the air and ballistic missile defenses that are left in Iran, and then the missile and other retaliatory capabilities. And again, keep in mind that there were hundreds of targets by each of the Israeli and U.S. forces. So a really extraordinary amount of ordnance being dropped and going in as cruise missiles as well. And it appears to have been very, very devastating in a lot of ways, but still always an ability to retaliate with both the longer range that could reach Israel and then the shorter range, of which they have a substantial number, that can reach across the Gulf.
Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing that happen. We just were reporting on devastation in Beersheba, which is outside of Jerusalem. That's a pretty big target. And what does that tell you about what is still left in the Iranian arsenal?
Sure, we should understand that even in the 12-day war, with all of the ballistic missile and air defenses that we assembled, and they're very considerable, and we've done it again now. It's not just the Patriots and the terminal high-altitude air defense systems that are on the ground, but also all the ships have Patriot-like systems. There are planes flying to try to take out missiles and drones and so forth. So this is a very, very comprehensive effort, and it's all integrated with the host nations and with Israel, to be sure. But even then, 5 to 7% of the missiles got through during the 12-day war, and if they hit, unfortunately, as the one did that you reported on earlier, there can be a big amount of devastation.
And then, Brett, what does it tell you about the fact that Iran is retaliating the way it is when it comes to who's actually in charge now?
It's a great question. You know, George Kennan, a great diplomat, said war once initiated has a momentum of its own. You don't know exactly where it's going to go. I think over Iran right now, very importantly, look, the United States and Israel has complete not just air superiority, but air dominance, and they're still targeting leaders. This is still going on. We're still doing waves of strikes. So whoever might step up into a leadership role is very vulnerable. The Iranians have announced they have a constitutional process. Remember, they've only had one secession in their entire history since 1979. So this is really an uncharted territory. They have a secession process under their constitution, a council of the president, the chief justice, and a cleric to be named. They say who's running the country now, but those people haven't been seen. Ali Larijani, who's a key advisor to the supreme leader for many decades, he's likely making some decisions. But what I'm seeing Iran do, they're firing off missiles. This was probably a pre-cooked plan for when they were attacked. It's unclear who is making strategic decisions, and they're making some mistakes, Dana. They're attacking civilian areas of the Gulf, and the Gulf states, the GCC states there, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, are uniting. And I would watch this over the coming days. Do they actually, their air forces are now engaged in defense. Do they actually join in some attacks into Iran in self-defense? I think that's a key question. That was not, I think, on my bingo card when this started. I think the Gulf wanted to stay out of it. Yeah. They're being drawn in, so that's something to watch over the coming days.
A big mistake, I think, actually, Dana, because again, the Gulf states that they have been attacking the Gulf states. The Gulf states wanted to stay out of it, as Brett said. So they did not even allow us to use their bases in a number of cases. Now they're into it. They've been attacked, and not just our bases, but civilian areas as well. And so they're going to take place now with the defensive measures. As Brett mentioned, we have aircraft in the sky now. I'm sure they're being integrated by the Combined Air Operations Center. And if that continues, they're going to probably take further measures.
I want to talk about the chaos and instability in the region, obviously militarily, but also economically. I mean, if you see the Strait of Hormuz, which is right there, I mean, that's a key geographical location for a lot of these countries.
Well, 20% of global trade, 80% of Iran's oil, of course, goes to Asia and China. China has a big interest here. And I have just one geostrategic issue. Russia and China, very quiet here. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're very much strategic partners of Iran, very quiet. I think that's very telling. We'd expect when oil markets open, the price of oil is going to go up, I think, fairly significantly. We'll see. OPEC met today. They announced they're going to be increasing production. But look, think about escalation dominance in a conflict like this. If Iran makes moves in the Straits of Hormuz, as they're threatening, they targeted some tankers today, U.S. Air Forces have escalation dominance here. We can target Iran wherever we want. So Iran has to be calculating that. To the extent Iranian leaders are even thinking strategically, they seem to be just firing off their missiles without a strategic plan, and that shows real disarray in their chain of command.
Yeah, maybe a result of all the leaders taken out. They're just acting on pre-decision that they were authorized before. But again, 20% of the world's crude oil and 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas come right through the strait. There's already a report that the traffic is down by some 50 to 70%. And then, as Brett mentioned, there was a ship attacked right in here. Mm-hmm. And that's going to, Maersk has announced that they're stopping going through here and also through the strait that the Houthis have disrupted in the past. They're, of course, an Iranian surrogate as well. So we'll see an effect, but it likely will be a short-term effect. It will not be enduring unless there's some really significant escalation, say mining of the Strait of Hormuz that for some reason requires longer than normal to clear.
Joining us now to discuss is CNN Global Affairs analyst Kimberly Dozier and CNN military analyst Cedric Leighton. Cedric, I want to go to you first on this news we got from Nick Robertson that Saudi Arabia is now authorized to get involved in this conflict. I mean, things seem to really be escalating here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Pamela. And good morning to you again. There is, a real relationship here that is very intricate, between the Saudis on the one hand and the other countries that they're dealing with, and especially Iran. On one, sometimes you have the Iranians and the Saudis reach a rapprochement. That rapprochement is definitely over at this particular point in time. There are reports that MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, had actually secretly agreed to let this operation go forward without using Saudi airspace. But even without using Saudi airspace, Iran is still getting the Saudis involved, attacking Saudi facilities, attacking Gulf state facilities of countries like Qatar and Bahrain and the UAE. Yeah. And that is something that is really angering the Saudis and their Gulf Cooperation Council partners, which those other countries are part of. So this is definitely a point in which things are escalating, and it is very clear that the Saudis are not happy with what Iran is doing.
Kim, help us understand why Iran is attacking the Gulf states. Because one might think doing that would further isolate themselves and it could backfire. I mean, it's going beyond just the military bases in those countries.
Yeah, this was something that Gulf leaders had warned of in the run-up to any potential military action. They have a number of U.S. targets in them, both the U.S. bases, but also U.S. commercial interests. And the fact of the matter is the Gulf countries have tried to walk this narrow line of being Iran's ally, or at least a partner to Iran on one side and trading with them, and also allowing these very large U.S. military bases to operate in their territory. So they always knew they were going to be in the firing line. One of the other things that's happened because of this ongoing warfare and targeting of some of the ports is that container ships and oil tankers have basically dropped anchor, and there are hundreds frozen at various points along the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, waiting for some of this to die down. If one of those would somehow get struck, by collateral fire, it's dangerous environmentally. It's eventually going to affect global oil prices. Now, we've heard that oil producers are going to increase the amount of oil on the market for a short period of time in response to the warfare, but soon Americans and others could be feeling the results of this war in their pocketbook. Could take a few weeks, but this is not done yet in terms of the targets being struck.